The program this morning, which I think we entitled Sewers, Storm Drainage, I can't remember now, and Water Reclamation, is extremely important to not only the city of Springfield, but obviously the bulk of the county. Norm Sims will serve as moderator this morning for the program. Norm is now retired, but as you probably know, was the former director of the Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission, if I got that right. If I didn't, I don't care. But in any event, Norm, the program is all yours.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning. Isn't this just the kind of day that you wake up in the morning, the first thing you think about is, let's go to Citizens Club and talk about sewers? Well, if it's not, it should be, because as Bob indicated, you know, the sewer systems probably do not get the kind of public attention that other infrastructure such as roads and bridges and the like get, but it's vitally important, both in terms of public health and safety, especially on the sanitary sewer side, but secondarily on the rainwater side, because we're seeing that rain events, particularly in urban areas, are coming more often and are much more intense, and I'm sure that particularly Greg can speak to that today as well. In fact, sewers are so important that at least one historian has said that the greatest civil engineering feat that the Romans had was not the public baths, it wasn't the public buildings, it wasn't the aqueducts, it wasn't the road, it was their sewer system. Unfortunately, the only person that we have who's old enough to remember the Roman sewer system is Bob Gray, so we invited a couple of people to address where we are today, those being Mark Mahoney, which I think most of you know, Director of City of Springfield's Public Works, and Greg Humphrey, the Executive Director of the Sangamon County Water Reclamation District, which, Greg, I still have to read that to make sure I get it right. I'm still an old guy. I fall back on old ways. So what they're going to be doing is talking about the systems that they're responsible for, some of the challenges they face, even how those kind of systems interrelate. We might follow that up with a couple of questions to tie things together and then open it to your gentle mercies and any questions that you might have. And I believe today we're going to start with Mark. Okay. You're on.
First, I want to say thank you to the Citizens Club really for this opportunity. As Norm mentioned, it's very rare that we get a request to talk about sewer, especially at 7:30 on a Friday. Not many people want to do that, except for the Public Works Department and see some of the engineers here in the crowd. So thank you for that opportunity. And it's also a good opportunity to talk about it, not responding to social media or when in the middle of a rain event. You don't see much really in-depth discussion of or infrastructure in general, but our sewer system in particular, because as Norm alluded to, it's something really, it's out of sight, out of mind really, and most of the public until there's a problem. And that's really when it seems like we have our discussion with elected officials, with the public, is when there's a problem and they want really a quick fix to that problem. And when we do make improvements in the system, especially on the maintenance side, you don't get a lot of response with that either, because that infrastructure is put underground. People don't really notice a change. They expect their sewers to work. If they don't, there's a problem. But if they're just working like they should be, there's no road to see, there's no new bridge, there's none of the infrastructure above ground that you can really look at and know that there's been progress made and see what you paid for. So that's really what the challenge is when you're looking for more money and trying to make decisions on how to spend that money, we're trying to work that with the public and elected officials too. So really, the first thing I want to do is really to us, it really comes down to what we call the frequently asked questions. And that's where, as I reference, it really comes down to this. When we're responding to the public, what we hear, and even from elected officials, it's these questions that come up over and over and over again, usually after or during some type of rain event, some weather event, or some failure, if it's in the winter or the spring. You know, how do we stop sewer backups in our basements? Obviously, if nobody wants sewer backing up the basement, we get those calls. You get the how do we stop flooding in basements, underpasses, and streets. The underpasses is a favorite of the media. Every time we get a little bit of rain, if there's water centered for any brief period of time in underpass, that becomes the topic. Why isn't the city doing something? Why aren't you fixing this? Those type of things. How do we stop sewer cave-ins, of course? Why isn't the city doing anything to fix the problem? What do we need to spend to fix our sewers? And of course, the discussion always in how old our sewers are and why did we let them get that old? Why are we repairing them, replacing them? Those kind of things. So the next slide, let's click this there, gives a little bit of a kind of a general background on what the city's responsible for. Greg's going to talk here in a minute, but the easy way when we try to explain it to people is, which many of you here in the room know, the city's responsible for the collection system in the city of Springfield, and then of course the sanitary district or reclamation district, whatever we're calling it now, is responsible for the treatment of that sewage as we send it to their plants and they treat it. There are variations of that, which makes it even a little more complicated, even within the city of Springfield, where the sanitary district is responsible for some of those collection systems, particularly out by the lake in some of those areas, some of the donut holes, as well as they're responsible for a lot of the collection systems in some of the smaller communities throughout the county greater Springfield area. What we're responsible for in Springfield, that collection system, is about 140 miles of your combined sewers, which is that older, much of the older sewer in the downtown area and a lot of the older areas of the city. A lot of everything really before World War II. After World War II is primarily separate sanitary district or systems. We have about 355 miles of those. And then there's something really, it kind of fits in what Norm was alluding to, is a lot of the stormwater flooding, a lot of the issues which are really visible to people, and that's what people usually see, and that's where we get a lot of calls on that. If there's water, it seems like people have become more less tolerant, I should say, of water sitting in the street, even if it's functioning properly. Sometimes water will sit in a gutter and then it'll drain over time if we get a large event. We have about 200 miles of storm sewers. It takes a lot of that capacity. We have a lot of issues in areas where we don't have storm sewer, or we have drainage issues with maintenance items that need to be taken care of that we just don't have the funding to address, which leads me into the next piece is our sewer division and how it's funded. The sewer charge on the city, on the utility bill, the city portion, you'll see the average customer pays about $12 a month in sewer fees. That's for about 10 units of water. It's based off the water usage. And then there's a separate sanitary district fee that funds the treatment piece of that. For us, we collect about $6.5 million a year, roughly, and that's based on basically a rate increase that's been going on over time. I'll touch on that here in a second. But really, we break it up. About 40% of it is those operations. That's the Vactor units you see that we send out. They do the cleaning. We have TV inspection teams. It also our sewer engineer. Those items are funded really through that fund, and that's an enterprise fund. It's separate from the city corporate budget fund, which is a good thing, especially these days when we're having a lot of problems on the corporate budget side, the general budget. So that is set aside, and we're able to utilize that just for sewers. The current rate structure, as I mentioned, the $12 addition a month roughly is based off of really was a rate increase in 2013 that went in place. It continues on through 2022, and that's to fund really our capital improvement plan. That averages about 50-cent increase a month for the average customer every year over that period of time to fund that capital improvement plan. That was put in under Mayor Houston's administration, and the previous council was put in place to really fund a capital improvement plan or program that we really didn't have the funds to fund, and using some of the Clean Water Act, borrowing some of the money through that EPA program. So we're really, we'll talk a little bit about that probably later, but we're borrowing to do some of our, we call capital improvement. It's really kind of a maintenance item. We're not doing a lot of, I would say, improvements, modernization type things. The next page really kind of lays that out, the difference in the two rates. I mentioned that there's different for customers in the sanitary district versus the city of Springfield. And really that when you get down to what this really shows is there is a difference. If you're a city of Springfield customer and your collection system, primarily out by the lake, but there's some other areas that you're paying the sanitary, their rate for the collection, it is higher than the city rate, and that's not a criticism of the sanitary district or saying their rate's too high or ours is too low. We would tend to say probably it's too low. But what that does, the way we look at it, and we'll talk a little bit about that too, is at that rate, it would allow us, probably the city, if we were at the same level as the sanitary district, we'd be able to fund a more aggressive capital improvement program and probably put us where we probably should be or close to where we should be on just our maintenance side of it. So the important thing is to know there's a difference there. This is a chart that was put together by our sewer engineer, John Higginbottom. I'll introduce them here at the end. But really what it is talking about what is that appropriate level of maintenance, maintaining our system. And we sort of use an average age of about 50 years as the industry standard. And that's where we rely on our professionals to kind of guide us. And meeting that 50-year average age, there's a lot of variables in that. But really what that is, looking at our system in its entirety. Obviously, with new development, with our capital improvement program, if we do lining and replacement, that kind of thing, it helps maintain that 50-year age. It allows us to stay on top of our system and doing the maintenance that needs to be done. What this projection shows you, what we're spending now is probably that $1 to $2 million a year. That's what that rate increase I mentioned is allowing us to do. Our professionals, our engineering staff, they recommend we be spending at the $4 million level. And you can see those lines, how they project out the over time. Actually, you pull it, if you push it farther with the $4 million, it gets you back to the 50-year average. Obviously, we're getting above that, which we do not believe it is a good situation to be in. And sometime in the near future, obviously, we're going to have a discussion on how we start to address that capital improvement need. But that chart does a good example of showing you really kind of where we're headed and based on the amount of spending on our capital improvement. The next slide, I call this the sky is falling slide, because this is what we talk about, you know, if perfect storm, a lot of the funding issues that are out there. The city is under administrative order with the US EPA. We actually submitted, CMT worked with us to put together a study in the northeast area of the city of some issues that we have there and some improvements that need to be made. And we submitted that to the EPA. We're still waiting. Every once in a while they'll check in with us, but we haven't got a final determination on that. We anticipate that those improvements being approximately a $40 million project that's currently unfunded over probably a 10-year period is what we suggested. You'll see the town branch study. That's really what the sanitary district put together with CMT here recently. There's some crossover in some of these probably, so it's not a perfect itemization of everything, but it kind of shows you kind of some of the things that are out there. Then of course our capital improvement program, we estimate about $55 million over 10 years. And then the stormwater piece of it that I mentioned that really is currently unfunded. The way we do our stormwater projects now is taking out of our general infrastructure fund. We call it Fund 95, and that's it's through sales tax, hotel, motel, and that's the fund that primarily funds streets, sidewalks, those type of things. So there's not a lot of money there, but we try to do a project here and there. The biggest one we probably did recently, as some of you may see on 10th Street, it was putting in a storm sewer in an area that did not have it, so that's a huge improvement over there. But we should be spending probably about $2 to $4 million a year on that. The future outlook really is kind of what we're here to talk about, I think, and really the sewer revenue question, which I've touched on, is really what are we going to do after 2022? So after 2022, really we don't have the funds for maintaining a capital improvement program at the level that we believe we should be. The other issue to talk about is there's been a lot of discussion, what's a public responsibility, what's a private responsibility? A lot of the older areas of the city, just like so our sewers are failing, you have laterals that are failing. You have areas where people can't afford really to make those repairs. The city is somewhat unique. We have something we refer to it as the Kuntz ordinance, because Alderman Kuntz proposed it several years ago, where the city takes responsibility for what would be considered a private lateral when it crosses onto the public right-of-way. So anything on the sidewalk into the street, that type of thing, if there's a break or an issue with your lateral, the city will reimburse you and pay for that. That's actually a drain on our fund as well. It's something that's different. The sanitary district, I don't think, does that. Most places don't do that. So there's a lot of discussion, especially when we talk about that northeast sewer area. We know there's some lateral issues probably out there that people are not going to have the funding to take care of. Should there be some type of loan program? Should there be some type of grant? There needs to be some consideration of that, because those have an impact on the system and they need to be addressed. And then the other question it's come up all the time is it better to borrow or to fund this maintenance on a pay-as-you-go? You know, probably the most prudent would be pay-as-you-go on the maintenance side, but it's a tough sell to the alderman, to city council, or to any elected official, just because it means your rates are going to have to be a little bit higher to maintain that program. In the long run, it's probably going to be better off, but as we know, the American way now is kind of really to borrow today and pay it in the future. So that's a discussion that's probably needs to be had as well. The merger is really been, especially with this group, and I know there's some, I know Bob and some others are on the Citizens Efficiency Group. So the merger is always something that comes up. And to us, it's something what we've talked, and Greg and us have talked quite a bit and had discussions on it when that group was meeting, as well as periodically we talk about items about possibility of merger. And a lot of it comes down to discussing what that level of service, what does it mean? What would a merger mean for the citizens, in our case, the city of Springfield? Would it be an improvement in the services they are provided? And a lot of things, there's a lot of variables in our policy. I mentioned the Kuntz ordinance, a little bit different, some different approaches. Not saying any of them are right or wrong, it's just a difference. It would have to be worked through. And then as well as that level of service also determining, you know, the public, private, those kind of things have to be worked through as well. The other piece of that is, the fact is, there are pieces that the city would have to maintain. We have a lot of the above-ground infrastructure that is part of that. The inlets, well, of course, with the storm sewers, but the inlets to support the combined system, those type of things at the street level that probably would have to be maintained by the city. So there's a lot more in that discussion that needs to come about. And then you also have the give and take of the politics of elected officials if they want to give up that control of the city side of the sewer division. The other piece of it, it's very clear. It's that a rate increase, and I showed the difference in the district rate versus the city. It is very clear that a rate increase probably would be coming for most people in the city of Springfield, and that's probably because it probably should in many ways, and that's because of where we should be funding our capital improvement program. So more than likely, just handing over a merger, I'm sure handing over to Greg would be handing over infrastructure that needs improvements, and it wouldn't have the funding to do that unless there was some type of revenue to support that. So that's probably ultimately where it end up. So a lot has to a discussion, a lot of consideration for that if we head in that direction. And then the big item, other big item out there is the stormwater utility. I mentioned a lot of cities have already moved in this direction. You've seen it in areas where they've looked at how do they fund their stormwater improvements, maintenance, those kind of things. Springfield doesn't have a funding mechanism, as I referenced earlier. We need to have a real serious discussion about that because with the changing weather patterns that Norm had mentioned, we're seeing a lot more surface flooding. We're seeing a lot of issues that we know there's a lot more engineering to be put forward, but there's projects out there that need to be completed, and we just don't have the funding to do that at this point in time, and we need to create a dedicated funding source. The next slide, really in conclusion, kind of I think the statements that kind of really hit everything on the head and kind of ties it together. All infrastructure, including sewers, are community assets that must be maintained and improved as it ages, as climate conditions change, and as regulatory guidelines demand. Leadership from elected officials is critical to accepting the professional guidance within the constraints of the community's established level of service and funding those needs. And finally, this is a discussion we must continually have between engineering professionals, elected officials, and the public to set sound and affordable policy for maintaining our sanitary and storm sewer infrastructure. And I think the tricky part of that is it's easy for people, elected officials particularly, and I think the community as a whole, is they want to know what's it cost to fix it, let's fix it and be done with it. The sewer, like all of our infrastructure, is never completely done. We'll always be spending money on it. We'll always be having these discussions and meetings like this probably in the future. And if we're not, that's when we have real problems.
As many of you know, we are now the Sangamon County Water Reclamation District. We went through a name change the end of 2016. I am the executive director. I'm a registered professional engineer in Illinois and 6 additional states and a registered professional land surveyor. I received my bachelor's and master's degrees from Bradley University, and I currently hold an Illinois Environmental Protection Agency Class 1 wastewater plant operator certificate and an IEPA collection systems operator certificate. Sangamon County Water Reclamation District was basically voted in by referendum in 1924. We were organized then and began operations in 1928. Previously we were known as the Springfield Sanitary District, then the Springfield Metro Sanitary District before our name change now, which better reflects the larger area that we encompass. The district is overseen by a 5-member board. All of the members are appointed by the Sangamon County Board. All right, this is our original district boundary. This was what was formed in 1924. Basically, City of Springfield. Current district boundary, quite a bit larger. We go down as far as Glenarm, go as far north as the north side of Sherman. We're picking up the western edge of Curran as they're developing their sewer system, and we go as far east as Rochester. To show you our overall service area, there's Sangamon County's borders. 3 out of 4 county residents are served by the district, and the outlined area there is the district service area within the county. Services we provide collection and treatment services for approximately 152,000 residents of Sangamon County. Springfield, Sherman, Rochester, and Chatham own their own collection systems, but all of the sanitary sewage from all of these areas is treated at the two districts' plants. District owns, operates, and maintains a lot of its own collection system in parts of Springfield, Jerome, Leland Grove, Southern View, Grandview, along with many unincorporated areas that you may be familiar with, such as Lake Town area, the area east of the old Fiat Alice site known as the Cabbage Patch area. We own and operate those collection systems. District pump stations. As part of our collection system, we have over 30 pump stations throughout the city of Springfield. You can't always flow everything to the plants by gravity, and you have to have a pump station system to get it there. Our sewers throughout the service area is everything shown in yellow. So we have sewers that crisscross across the city. The only area that we really don't have any in are the downtown area where it's all combined sewers, which the city owns and controls. This was our new plant. We have two plants. We actually have two new plants. The Spring Creek plant was $125 million of construction costs. This is the one north of Veterans Parkway, north of the fairgrounds. And in 2017, we were awarded the Illinois Association of Water Pollution Control Operators Plant of the Year. The last time this was bestowed upon Springfield's plant was 1963. So the new plant got an award for it and also received several awards for design on it. Our second plant we just completed was the Sugar Creek plant. This is at the intersection of I-72 and Interstate 55. It was $54 million construction. Both plants are up and running, and we operate all our facilities to meet or exceed the permits which are given to us by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. We follow a capacity management, operations, and maintenance plan which was developed specifically for the district in regards to maintaining our infrastructure. We are currently on a 3-year cleaning cycle for all our small diameter mains, which is 12 inches and smaller. So our CMOM plan says that we need to do it in 6 years, and we've placed this onto a 3-year schedule so that we can get this taken care of. Once these areas have been cleaned, we go in and camera them. We have our own video truck. We go out and camera these, and then any areas that are determined to have structural deficiencies, we go in and either repair or replace. Relining. Currently, we're doing relining, $800,000 project, and this basically sets up our sewers so that they'll have an additional 50-year life added on to them. Majority of the district's 12 and smaller pipes, which are the local collectors, have either been relined or replaced with PVC plastic pipe. So out of 120 miles, approximately 80 are the smaller size lines, and they have almost all been replaced. And just to give you an idea, there's the before and after shot. Vitrified clay tile on the left side, and then after the liner's put in and it's cured, that's the type of result you get. It gives you at least an additional 50 years, and really, since this product's only been around for about 35 to 40 extensively, no one knows the true life. It may well exceed it. I think it might have missed one. Nope. 4 recent projects we've completed, kind of important. All of our drinking water comes from Lake Springfield. These projects shown in red, the district developed, constructed, and is currently connecting homes at Lake Springfield that are on septic tanks. It's imperative we get these off. At one time there was 425 homes on septics. Now there's about probably 325 that are on septics out at the lake. We're continually working on projects and have done a study for the complete lake area to eventually get these off of our drinking water. Future improvements, we're going to start the work and have started the work on the combined sewer overflow problems. The long-term control plan work beginning right now, 2018, and we will be spending $5 million a year for 16
years and reduce flows and reduce overflows on our system. It's important to reduce these combined sewer flows. It's due to the fact that the additional cost of treating and collecting this water doesn't cost just the city of Springfield, which is the only contributor to the combined sewers. It costs everyone on the system for treatment costs. The district also will be constructing a disinfection system for its Sugar Creek plant. We have been told by IEPA that we are going to have to start disinfecting that effluent, which produces a better product for release into the environment. Also, we anticipate continually relining pipes within our system. We'll begin relining the larger trunks, the older ones that are showing any structural deficiencies and such, and expect to spend $200,000 to $400,000 per year in that endeavor. In sewage, we're all connected. Basically, the sanitary district takes care of all of the sewage for the complete area. And I have one person I'd like to introduce in the back, Jason Jacobs, who's standing at the computer there. He's the district engineer. He is also a professional engineer, and he oversees all of the collection systems and construction within the district. And that's all I have at this time. Norm, if you'd like to take over.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. I mean, before we open things up for questions, I have sort of a question because Mark mentioned it in passing, and I wanted to come back to it, and that was the concept of a stormwater utility. What would that mean, first of all, in terms of what the public would see different than how things operate now? And would that just be within the city limits of Springfield if such a thing came forward, or would it be more regional within Greg's operational area? Yeah, and I think we've got for you guys too. See if that works.
It's like Bill Donahue or something. Walking
Yeah.
around. Yeah, well, I think that a lot of that's open to discussion. You see in a lot of communities, I know Champaign did a permeable pavement where they do actually formula calculations based on area. So if you have green space, you get credits. There's so much for residential units. So people are basically assessed at an amount that goes into a stormwater utility fund that would fund projects like maybe improving some of our underpasses. That's always one that's publicly recognized, easy to talk about. The other issue or areas, southern part of the city, and a lot of areas where we don't have storm sewer. So the older area, we have what I call the country roads. There's used to be ditches in some of those areas, and they've been filled in. So it's putting in storm sewer in that area. It may be looking even some green infrastructure. Green infrastructure has limited impact a lot of times on some of these issues, but it's something that we're always talking about, looking at, and it's very something that people like to see these days. So it's just having the funds to do those type of things that we don't have right now. Like I said, we have projects out there we know need to be done. Some of them still need engineering on them, but we have projects that are pretty straightforward maintenance. We try to do some with the Fund 95 I mentioned earlier. Every year we have a contract with a private contractor, and we have a list of projects. TJ Heavysides, what I call our development engineer, sort of our drainage guy, kind of oversees that. And then we have some of our crews do some of, if it's ditching, culverts, that kind of stuff. That's all stormwater related expenses that we don't have a separate fund for. So if we had the funding, we'd start to address some of those issues. And we also, moving forward, we know that because of the changing weather conditions, probably those problems are going to continue to increase as time goes on.
Would those be more wider spread, the utility, than City Springfield? Would that get in?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, what we have in our collection system areas, the storm sewers are separate. The only issue with the combined sewers is within the city of Springfield, there's approximately a 6.5 mile square area that have combined sewers. So out in the district's collection system areas, such as Jerome, Leland Grove, Southern View, Grandview, areas such as that, those are not combined sewers. So the stormwater there is handled by the local roadway authority.
You know, you mentioned, I kept in mind during this two things that always come up. One was the sewering of the area around Lake Springfield, which Greg, you mentioned. But the other one that seems to always come up is the Old Town Branch sewer, talking about combined sewer. Would you say something about what the status of that might be and what the future for the Town Branch sewer?
Well, the Town Branch sewer was part of our study for our combined sewer overflow.
This runs through this
long-term
downtown
control
Springfield,
plan.
yeah.
It basically was the creek that ran through the center of Springfield. It starts at approximately 11th or 12th in Cook Street and continues on in a northwesterly manner, goes past the Capitol Building, 2nd Street and Monroe, and continues on behind Ace Hardware before it eventually discharges at Douglas Park, west of Douglas Park by a block. This was basically a natural waterway that was filled in and covered. And as part of that, when the sanitary sewers were constructed in the city of Springfield, the oldest one we know of was 1857, and they all went down and connected in to the town branch, and that's the issue now. Everything in those areas is combined, and you have 6.5 square miles. Well, I think the town branch area is 4 of that. 4 square miles coming to one point, and that's where the issue is.
Yeah, and part of it I know, in the downtown area, it's always a problem in terms of development in that area, building in and around Old Town Branch.
Yeah, and for us, the city of Springfield, in some ways, I mean, we have the same issues, but when we get the calls related to the town branch, the downtown area, a lot of it comes down to surface flooding because the town branch is not able to take that capacity at in those large events. And it's interesting, if anybody's interested, the Sangamon County Historical Society did a nice article on, they did a story on the history of the town branch. And John Higginbottom one time said, we get the calls, the city's doing nothing. Well, we've been working on the town branch since 1850 in some way. So we've been working on it for a long time. It's just, the article, that's why I encourage you to read it, because it talks about even at that time, there was discussion on whether they should close it in. The reason they enclosed it at that point in time was because of the sewage, but also because they couldn't afford to put bridges over it when it was flooding. So it's a very interesting article to read. So
With that, we'll open things up to your questions. I think, Bob, you have a microphone, or Mr. Donlin, Alderman Donlin has. Yes, sir, go ahead.
I have a question for Greg. I was recently connected. I was recently connected to the sewer system down by the lake, and I received these letters from a company called American Water Resources telling me that I'm responsible for anything between the main and my house. And so they want me to send them a check, of course, to pay for them to do whatever. At the same time, I have coverage under my homeowner's insurance policy for that same sort of thing. I guess my question to Greg is, am I responsible for everything from the main to my house, or do you folks cover that?
Are you connected onto one of our new low-pressure systems that we put in at the lake?
Yes.
The sanitary district owns and maintains and repairs and does everything up to that system. The only part you would be responsible for is the 10 or 15 feet of line going into your house, your service line. We disconnect it at the septic tank, and we take care of everything from our small pump unit out to and including the main and such.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, as a general statement, not related necessarily to the lake, isn't it generally the property owner who maintains the system from the main to the house? Excuse me.
If it's a standard gravity system in the sanitary district, the lateral, the person's private sewer line up to and including the connection at the sewer main, is the responsibility of the homeowner. But if we have pipe failures at the sewer main in the connection, which is part of our pipe being deficient, then the sanitary goes in and repairs the connections.
Yeah, the only thing that I knew was different is you mentioned Coons's ordinance related to, you want to say anything about that?
yeah, well, in the gravity systems that Greg's referencing in the city, the lateral connection to your home, if it's on the public right-of-way, which in most of the city is the sidewalk to the street, then it's a city responsibility. So if there's a repair that needs to be done, usually there's a process you call the sewer division. They'll require a private contractor digs it up, shows the repair needs to be made on the city side. Then the city will reimburse for that lateral repair. The other thing to point out, I think, the paying for the work out of the lake, is that a combination of sanitary district, utility, and the private individuals? So funding that out there and taking that off, that's another, there's so many variables in how we fund the sewers and some of the situations that we have out there, so.
Yeah, that lake project is a huge project. It's one that's been needed for many, many years.
In relation to the lake projects, the sanitary district was given, I guess you would call it the rights or the service area for all of the lake area in the late 60s, early 70s. The sanitary district took over all of the old city water, light, and power maintained sewers and pump stations. As you might have noticed on the pump station drawing, there are a lot of red dots or pump stations out at the lake. And the sanitary district rehabbed all of those stations, upgraded them, and basically the sanitary district is responsible for owner and operations and maintenance of all of the lake sewers out at the lake.
Next question. Mayor?
This would be to Greg, and just based on looking at the city of Springfield, looking at the total number of sewers we have in the city, and comparing it to Peoria. And could you sort of talk about what Peoria has gone through, what they are spending, and why they're spending it, and just to give people an idea that this is not something that's going to go away. It's going to get done one way or another.
The city of Springfield had a large combined sewer overflow issue, and what they have done is that one time, I believe we have 7 combined sewer overflow points out on our system, and I believe the city of Peoria at one time had 135 overflow points, and of course, US EPA and Illinois EPA did not like that. They have entered into agreements with the Greater Peoria Sanitary District where areas of the city are improved, and then the sanitary district takes over and owns and operates those systems from that point on. But I don't know the exact number, and I know that people are here from CM&T that have done it, but I don't want to put them on the spot, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars is what I believe is going to be spent at Peoria to try and take care of these issues.
I want to make sure, does everybody understand what Greg's talking about? We're talking about combined sewers, where sanitary and rainwater are going through the same sewer, and what
Yes.
that means in terms of an overflow point when there's a rain event.
Right. When you have the large rain events, of course, the basic system cannot handle it, and there are designated combined sewer overflow points out on the system. Town Branch being the most notorious and the largest. It actually flows when it is running full, when we have the large rainstorm downtown, 1 million gallons a minute. That's almost incomprehensible. But we have that facility set up at Lincoln Street that goes around under North Grand, where the old B&O Railroad used to go through, and there's a channel there that carries that storm water away from the center of the city of Springfield, and the sanitary district owns, operates, and maintains all of that system.
So that means when there's that kind of an event, I'm going to call it sanitary material, doesn't make it to the plant,
No,
goes
it
into the
does
waterway.
go out the pipes. They're permitted by US EPA and the Illinois EPA. And basically, normal sewage is 99.9% water and 0.1% solid. It's even less during a storm event. There is so much dilution. You're basically going from 100,000 gallons a day flow in a pipe to could be up to 3, 4, 5 million gallons of flow. And that additional flow, of course, is rainwater.
Next one. Yes, sir. He's bringing a microphone right to you.
According to your combined sewer overflow long-term control plan, your FY 2010 totals for water treatment in your reclamation district plants, you had a total build of wastewater based on the water use of in the district of 13.72 million gallons. The infiltration and inflow that's unbilled was 34.53 million gallons. So the treated at your plants was metered at 48.25 million gallons a day. You know, this is over the fiscal year. That's a lot of infiltration and inflow. What is the capacity for treatment at these new upgraded plants?
At the Spring Creek plant, our design flow is 32 million gallons a day with a peak flow of 80 million gallons a day. But we also have additional storm flow for these storm events of 133 million gallons a day. So we have 213 million gallons a day at that plant. At the currently renovated Sugar Creek plant, the old plant was 10 million gallons a day design and 25 million gallons a day peak. It now can handle 15 million gallons a day normal flow, 37.5 million gallons a day peak flow, and there's an additional 75 million gallons a day storm flow out there to handle storm events at the Sugar Creek plant.
So that does away with your, some of your earlier plans of building a satellite facility somewhere.
What we're looking at is, one, to site a new treatment plant is a 10 to 15 year process, if you can get it done. Not everyone wants a sewage treatment plant in their backyard, and we understand that. Our goal at this point has been to get the flows to the plant as efficiently as possible through systems upgrades and increase the size of the plant so that instead of going to the storm flow facilities at the plant, it goes through treatment due to the increased capacity of the treatment, and we're able to manage those storm flows better and keep them from going out into the environment. We're able to hold those and then bring those back into the plant after the storm event passes.
Thank you.
And I would mention, this is some of the larger engineering solutions to the problem. There are some things, particularly the Planning Commission has proposed in the past, that individual homeowners, property owners can do to just slow the rain as it comes off the house and comes off the property, be it rain gardens or rain barrels or whatever it is. All of that collectively, it may seem like a small amount on an individual parcel, but collectively that's a large amount of rainwater that can be slowed down that helps solve the problem.
I'm going to go next real quick. I wanted to congratulate the city for the work on Jackson Street in front of the mansion. And of course, the big projects there are fantastic. But could you explain a little bit more about what you did and the purpose? I know what the purpose was exactly, but maybe enlighten us a little bit on what the project was.
Well, most people think we're building a park there, so that's what the comments are. But actually, what's going on is there's some underground storage there of you saw basically a huge hole. We put pipes in there, and John Hagenbeck can speak to it better than I. But I was told that the volume there, I forget what it was, but I know what it was, 99 million 12-ounce beers is what I was told. This is capacity. So the idea is really to slow down. It's not going to be if we have a large rain event, you're still probably going to see some potential flooding in that area. It's just because we can't relieve it to the point where it's going to be that significant. But it will help with some of the minor events. So it was an opportunity where we were trying to do some streetscape on Jackson Street with what was going on with the mansion, what the realtors were doing there. So we said, why not look at some capacity issues where we can help with some of the flooding in that area. A lot of the Springfield area, and again, I defer to John on this, but there's a lot of different areas where we're looking at, we've done a lot of monitoring in that area of different projects that are probably going to have to be done in the future. But that was just a very small piece of some improvement we think that kind of can help there. The other thing is to touch on a little bit that Greg was talking about before is some ways it's not that we work against each other, but we'll have areas where people see the surface flooding and they don't like to see water sitting. So in some areas maybe we want to add an inlet. And Greg doesn't like to see inlets because that means there's more water going into his system that he has to treat. So it's a really complicated, connected basically engineering feat trying to figure all this out and figure out a way where we work together on a lot of these things. So, but for us, the biggest issue when you hear complaints, other than the basement backups, is the surface flooding. The basement backups, we even had some programs there. Many of you have probably seen us advertise and talk about it's a sewer ejector system. A lot of your older homes that were built prior to the 1970s have the gravity flow systems where they back up in the basement, that kind of thing. So the city actually pays for up to, I think it's $4,000 is our max to pay, which is about what it costs for a private plumber to put in a system in your basement that stops those backups, those kind of things. But of course, that when they do that, you do enough of them, it's probably forcing a current somewhere else down the system. So there's a lot of programs and things we're trying to do out there, sort of, I don't want to say Band-Aids, but they kind of are. But even some of those have an impact on what Greg has to take care of.
And similar to Jackson Street, you might mention what is being done related to the underpasses for the railroad relocation.
Yeah, well, and there's an opportunity there. We've talked a little bit about when we get to Jefferson and Madison, those underpasses, when they're developed. I know that the sewer division and working with our engineering consultants, we're looking at some detention in those areas that might help offset some of the flooding and the drainage issues we're having. Those areas, those are kind of down the line on the engineering part of it, and in the funding. We haven't got those funded yet, but in the next few years, we'll be
What I'm
looking
gonna
at
call
though.
large French drains related to.
Yeah, and that when you've seen like in Carpenter Street, we've had some it's been in since a couple years now, I think, and we've had a couple significant events where you've seen it did not flood. And then the older underpasses, I mean, you're still seeing it really. Those need to be improvements, and we'll make those in time. So.
Yes, sir.
In regards to the Jackson Street retention system, since we don't know what's going to happen with that square block, and it seems to be something that we can't resolve, is that going to have any impact on what could be done over the top of that?
It does. There can be no really significant structure over the top of that where those pipes are. So it's about a third, not quite up to, I think, about the alley, where the alley was originally. So that piece of it is always going to have to be some type of green space. You could put some type of maybe low impact type of structure there, but no building or anything.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question up here, Mr. Cameron.
Thanks. Greg, I know the sanitary district's main function is the treatment of sewage, but do you also maintain sewage systems outside the city of Springfield for storm sewers?
No,
Also
we-
oh,
Only sanitary sewer. We maintain an extensive sanitary sewer collection system. Most of Kern Gardner, Laketown, the Cabbage Patch area. We have a lot of the collar villages, the Leland Grove, Jerome, Southern View, Grandview, areas east of MacArthur, south of State Street. Anything that's within the county that is in a township that has sewer service, we own and operate and maintain the complete system.
if it's outside the city of Springfield.
Yes.
Correct. And then
Well, and even if there are some inside the city of Springfield, the sanitary district, by agreement with the city of Springfield, was granted all of the lake sewers, and we also have all of the sewers at Hunting Meadows subdivision going east from there. The sanitary district had the pump station that it connected to, and it was agreed at that time that the city did not want to own, operate, and maintain those systems, so the sanitary district took those systems.
And the city users pay for it by an add-on to their water bill. For those who don't live in the city, how do they pay for the sanitary district?
They pay for it through their water bill, just like a city customer does.
All right. And Mark, is that program you mentioned that a private person can get money from the city to maintain or to prevent flooding in their basements, is that still in existence, that program?
Yeah, yes, it is. You just contact the sewer division, and there's a process you go through to get the reimbursement.
One last question. Anybody else have a final question? Back to you, sir. Nobody on this side?
This is kind of related. The city of Springfield, in their attempt to build a second lake, is promising Pawnee, Divernon, and Verdon, I believe, to route them onto the sanitary district or the reclamation district because the outflows would violate phosphorus and nitrate standards for raw water. What's that going to do to your capacity? It's probably not a lot, but
Well, we have looked at it, and if that was to come to pass, the sanitary district Sugar Creek plant, when it was renovated, was sized large enough to include those flows and such. So we've prepared for that. Our plants basically were designed for a 30-year in the future look ahead, but development has slowed slightly, and they're probably good for at least 50 years plant capacity-wise. And of course, you know, depending on whether that goes or not, we have the ability to serve them.
one more question regarding the effluent from your pollutant discharge elimination permit. Are you meeting nitrogen and phosphorus raw water standards in the Clean Water
We
Act?
are very well hitting those limits. Phosphorus, we were given a limit of 1 part per million on our discharge. we normally are running around 0.4 to 0.6 of part per million on that, and ammonia nitrogen, we are sometimes below the detection limits going out. So both of the new plants using biological nutrient reduction systems are performing excellently.
Okay, so you're just about a little bit under, like
Well-
tenth of a microgram under the phosphorus standard.
Well, no, the phosphorus standard is one part per million, and we're hitting right around a half.
Well, for water supply, I thought it was 0.05 milligrams.
Well, we don't go into any water supplies. We discharge into Sugar
Okay,
Creek.
well, that's the problem with
and Sangamon
Pawnee
River.
Okay, well, of course, the Sangamon River might become a water supply for drinking.
With that, thank you. I'm going to turn things over to Bob. I do want to mention one thing. I think it was Mark earlier mentioned the Citizens Efficiency Commission when it was looking at the question of merger, but the Citizens Efficiency Commission looked at some other ways to reduce cost, and some of those related to the issues we have here are things that individual citizens can do. One of the things we found was a lot of people raking leaves into their stormwater sewer every year, and that causes a problem. Some of the developers know that both the city and the county passed what's called the erosion control ordinance a number of years ago, because what we found was, particularly when dirt was being dug for different development projects, sometimes that would get loose and that would go into sewers and back them up too. So I just want to make the point that there's some things that could be done by individual citizens.
Right.
Go ahead.
If I could mention something on that, yes, the inlets and the inlet cleaning, as Mark is saying, we basically take out dumpster loads of leaves and the ever-present sweet gum balls. They are everywhere, and we get, I think, most of them in the city of Springfield. You know, when it comes to level of service, you know, we feel the district provides an excellent level of service. If there was any talk of mergers and such, we would only consider it if we could continue to provide the level of service that we now provide for our current customers. And basically where we've sat the last 2 years, our rates have been flat. So there are things in the future that are coming up that we'll have to look at, but you know, we're trying to provide the best service that we can for all of the residents, even those that we just provide treatment to, at the best possible dollar.
Yeah, I would just concur with, as far as the city perspective and our level of service, I would, our operations side, I think that they do a fantastic job, and we do, you know, in a lot of the lining stuff, what Greg talked about, a lot of those projects we're doing as well, and some even to a higher degree. Where the issue really comes down is those capital improvement programs funding, and Greg's actually, they're in a lot better position than having the funds to do a lot of those. We know what needs to be done. We got projects that are out there. It's just woefully underfunded. So it's just a matter of where those revenues are placed with the city sewer division or with sanitary district and some of these. So it's a discussion that it's going to have to be ongoing, and I think over time, like everything, all of our infrastructure we're talking about now comes down to money. That's really what it is. So.
With that, it always comes down to money. With that, would you please thank these two gentlemen and their staff for coming today to inform you about this?